Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lifford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. This week, we talk with a homeowner that's considering installing vinyl plank flooring in a basement. But what do you need to do before that installation? Very important. Also, we want to give you some tips on how you can win the battle with weeds without using harsh chemicals. And another problem that we're hearing about more and more is a bad smell in the water. What causes that water to smell like that, especially if it's hot water? And Joe, what about that simple solution?
I've got a quick tip on installing a dishwasher in a kitchen that has granite or stone countertops. Ordinarily, you could just, when they were wooden or laminate countertops, right, you just screwed straight up. But how do you do that if it's a stone or granite countertop?
I'm sure a lot of people are running into that these days with the popularity of solid surface countertops, granite, quartz, the whole family there. So we'll share that with you. So let's get started. If you'd like to call our 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week, today's homeowner hotline is 800-946-4420. Right now, we want to go to that hotline. We have Ken from Nebraska on. Ken, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on around your house.
Well, I'm refinishing or installing a basement bathroom.
Sure.
And I'm gonna put something on the floor. I'm not really sure what I'm going to use. I'm thinking of the vinyl planking. It says that it's waterproof. I get some moisture on the floor on a rare occasion, and I'm wondering, is there anything that I should be putting on that floor below the planking above the cement? It's a poured concrete floor.
Okay. Well, don't blame me for being concerned, because even with any type of floor that touts its waterproof nature, still having moisture entering into that, being under the floor, you're still going to have some problems with mold, mildew smells, and different things like that. So probably cleaning that concrete up really, really well. And then, Joe, what would you recommend to Ken on that in terms of some type of coating? We recommend dry lock from time to time, but what do you think on the floor like that? Because whatever you put down is going to help repel the moisture, but also is going to help that floor adhere to the floor a lot better. Yeah,
exactly, Ken. Now these are they're rated for waterproof for below grade, so you can only trust the manufacturer that they are indeed. But,
exactly.
Right, but I'm with you. If I was going to do this, because if it doesn't work, then what? You're going to rip up the floor and move the toilet and everything else. So I think you're smart to take a step, even if it's not needed, because it's not going to cost that much money. And it's not going to take that much time. And the easiest one would be, Danny said dry lock. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a line of waterproofing products. There's one called Dry Lock Extreme. If you're going to put one down, might as well put down the best one. Just roll it down, paint it down, follow the directions. Probably two coats of that. That would probably be all you need. If you want to move up another step, you can use a waterproofing membrane like Red Guard, or there's other ones. It's essentially like a liquid rubber, and you do the same thing. 2 coats, roll it down, brush it down, let it dry, then put on another coat. And then if you really were concerned, and I don't think you need to do this, but if somebody had some water, then the next step would be an epoxy paint. But I don't think you need to, you have very little moisture, and it's probably seasonal moisture. So
very much.
I would do either the waterproofing membrane or the waterproofer, the Dry Lock Extreme waterproofer.
Yeah, I think I'll try that and see how it works out. I just don't want, I'm thinking, should I go with tile? And then my knees are sore. I don't want to, So I'm thinking this might be a little quicker.
Yeah, it would definitely be quicker, be less expensive, and just remember to leave the expansion joints recommended by the manufacturer around the perimeter of the room. Okay?
Exactly.
All right. Well, good, Ken. Sound like a great project to tackle real soon, make a big difference in your home, and I'm sure it'll come out great. Let us know if we can help you any other way.
Thank you.
Hey, let's talk about killing some weeds without chemicals in our Around the Yard segment, brought to you by Pavestone. You know, this time of the year, many of us are finding ourselves battling those weeds, and no matter how diligent you are as a gardener, you're going to have to deal with them from time to time. It's just pretty much inevitable. So if the idea of using chemical herbicides doesn't appeal to you, and there's just too many weeds to pull by hand, which is always the best way to do it, you can find some natural options to kill the weeds and keep them from coming back. Now, in flower beds, mulch can really be your friend, but mulch alone really won't block enough of the sun to keep all the weeds from growing into your bed. So before you mulch, put down a layer of newspaper, cardboard, or landscape fabric over the soil to starve the weeds of light. That's going to help a lot. Now, this plan won't work for weeds that pop up through things like sidewalks, patios, and driveways, which always amaze me. How in the world do those things find their way through those little bitty cracks? So in those kind of situations, you may want to mix up a natural weed killer. All you need to do is fill the spray bottle with white distilled vinegar and top it off with just a little bit of dish soap. And then when you shake it up, you spray it on the weeds. What happens is the dish soap will cause the vinegar to stick to the leaves. And because vinegar is a natural acid, it'll begin burning the plants right away, usually leaving them brown and withered by the end of the day. Now, you can use this formula on weeds in the lawn too, but be sure to spray very carefully because this solution will also have the same effect on grass as it does on weeds. And this Around the Yard segment, again, brought to you by Pavestone. And I'll tell you something that that I learned years and years ago, which I truly believe is important, is when you if you're diligent and want to pull weeds, which again, if you can pull weeds and get the whole root and everything out, that's the best way to go. And it's immediate getting rid of those weeds, but immediately put that in a container. Don't lay it on the sidewalk or the driveway, because immediately you're spreading hundreds or thousands of seeds, weed seeds, that is next time it rains is going to populate your flower beds or your yard with more weeds. So you just want to treat it like it's poison and put it right in a little bag or garbage can and get it away from your yard as soon as you can. I see people making that mistake all the time, including my wife.
Well, yeah, you saw it as soon as you laid that beautiful sod you now have in your yard. Yeah, the vinegar, I mean, this is one of the many times where vinegar can really save the day for you, and it costs almost nothing. And I'm not sure if we've mentioned this in a while, Danny, but you can buy regular old vinegar that you would use in the kitchen at pretty much any store these days, and it's really cheap. And you can use it outdoors, and it works great. But they do make a higher strength, higher acidity white vinegar. I think it's just called garden vinegar or lawn and garden vinegar or something like that. And I think normal vinegar, the acidity is like 6 to 10%, something like that. But the garden vinegar, the acidity is up to like 20 to 30%. So it's much more acidic, and it really does kill those weeds by the end of the day. So, if you're really struggling with weeds that regular vinegar is not working on or working too slowly, then go out and get the higher strength vinegar.
DIY means sawdust, work gloves, and the right tools. But at the Home Depot, the right tools means more than hammers and saws. It means a mobile app with built-in image search. That's a tool. Access an entire rental department with a swipe. That's another tool. For any project, start to finish, this isn't just DIY. This is doing like never before. This is the Home Depot, how doers get more done. Download our mobile app to get started.
Hey, we've got a little problem on the horizon here down in Florida. Robert's on the line with us right now. And Robert, tell us all about what's going on, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I have well water, and I treat it with a salt softener, and I chlorinate it, and that goes through a filter before it comes into the house. The cold water is fine, but I have an electric hot water heater, and the electric hot water is really, really stinky. And I'm told there's a thing called an anode rod, I guess, that goes right down into the middle of the tank, and the purpose is to prevent the tank from deteriorating.
Correct.
But it reacts with the water, and that's what my smell is. So there's my problem. Can you guys help me with that?
Well, we certainly can, and it is one that we've heard about a lot. I just always just scratch my head on this one and just go, how odd, the chemical makeup of things that happen within our homes. This is a good example of it, but Joe has dealt with this quite a bit and has a solution for you right now.
Yeah, Robert, you're exactly right. And for people who aren't familiar, an anode rod is a sacrificial element that they put down inside of water heaters. So if there's any corrosion, instead of the corrosion eating the lining of the tank, it'll eat this anode rod, and it eventually just disappears, and you replace them occasionally. Now you had it replaced, the anode rod replaced, and the problem went away for a little while. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, that's an indication of they replaced a magnesium anode rod. Most anode rods are made out of magnesium. They replaced a magnesium one with a new magnesium one. And what happens is when you first put it in, there's no issue because it takes a while. By the way, the sulfur or rotten egg smell that you're smelling from your hot water is caused by a sulfate-reducing bacteria that grows inside the water heater. And that, in turn, is caused by a chemical reaction between the magnesium and the hot water. All right, so it's the magnesium in the hot water that's causing this bacteria to grow. So if you put in a new magnesium rod, it takes a week or a few weeks, whatever, but sooner or later, that bacteria builds up again. So here's the solution. You just have to replace, you have two options. Replace the magnesium rod with an aluminum anode rod, or you can install what's called a powered anode rod, which is non-sacrificial, meaning once you put it in, it's made out of, I think it's made out of insoluble titanium, and that does not eventually get eaten away. But in any case, it uses electric pulses, so it's hooked up to a electrical supply, and it uses electrical pulses to prevent corrosion. So those are your two options, and both will eliminate the odor in the water, either the aluminum anode rod or the titanium powered anode rod.
Okay, so the aluminum one is like you say, self-sacrificial. Would I have to replace that?
Yes.
I have to replace that eventually.
You would have to replace it eventually, and how often would depend on the quality of your water and how often you're using your water heater. When you hire a plumber to come in to replace it, if he's familiar with your neighborhood or town, he would probably be able to say, well, I replace them every 6 months, or I replace them every year, or whatever.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
No, they're not cheap, but it's better than replacing a water heater or having stinky water. Yeah. And your other option is to take cold showers, and that's not really a very good option.
Right. I have a question just out of curiosity.
Sure.
Friends who live with municipal water and have electric hot water heaters, they're not having this problem. So it is my well water, even though my well water is treated. I'm the one with the problem. Is there something different about my well water, even though it's been treated?
Sure, it could be the well water. It could be. I mean, I'm on a well, and I have a softener as well, and a sediment filter. But my hot water doesn't smell. So I think your neighbor might be on the well, and they might not have that issue either. So I think, I don't think you can tell by, whether one part of town compared to the other part of town, especially since you're drawing it out of the ground as opposed to being provided by the municipality.
So the electric one really works well.
Yes.
Pardon the pun.
I get it. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure, Robert. Thanks so much for being a part of the show today. Best of luck on that.
Thanks a lot.
Time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. One of the things you learn quickly about renovating homes is the value of new materials that can help hide old flaws. That's one of the reasons I really like this new entry knob and deadbolt combo pack from Defiant. The knob in this set features a new 70mm rose plate that provides more coverage, so the paint rings left by the old door hardware will never be seen. And flexibility is very important in remodeling as well, and the easy fit latch on this lock can accommodate either door thickness or back set that you may have, either 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. And from doors from 1 3/8 inch up to 1 3/4 inches thick. Plus, the pack includes 4 keys because, let's face it, we never seem to have enough house keys, and it's great when they can add a few more keys in there. So for more information on this Defiant entry knob and deadbolt combo lock, just log on to HomeDepot.com. odor.com. That makes a lot of sense there.
I love that idea, because if you've ever removed a doorknob that's been painted around, and the other new doorknob doesn't hide or doesn't line up exactly, there's no way to sand that perfectly smooth. You think, well, I'll just sand it and paint it. It never blends in.
Right now, let's head to the beautiful state of Tennessee, and Joe is on with us right now. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hi, Danny.
Tell us about the situation that you're having here with this deck. I hate to hear that you're having problems with it.
Well, before I do that, I just got to tell you, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your TV show. You've given us the confidence to try a number of things we wouldn't have tried, and we've been successful with most. The wife and I watch it every week.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Joe. We really have a good time putting it together. It's certainly great to work with my buddy Joe Truini on the show, as well as my daughter, Chelsea. So I appreciate you saying that. We're going to keep rolling along on that. About to head into our 24th season, so we're getting close to having it figured out. So it's working out well. Well, tell us what's happening there.
Well, I'll tell you, it started with a poor choice of contractor. I'll spare you the details, but it was a nightmare. It was a deck renovation, and we have a 2x8 handrail going around the circumference of the deck, and it was stained with timber oil, and it really wasn't as smooth and lustrous as we wanted. After it cured, I sanded it, not quite down to the wood. I figured spar urethane to use it on boats. So it ought to be good for this. And I used some glossy spar urethane over the top. It was beautiful. It was shiny, lots of depth, but it didn't last a year. It seemed to succumb to the weather and UV rays, and it just faded and dull and really nasty looking. So what I need is an idea for some preferably shiny coating for a handrail that would suffer the tribulations of weather and UV rays.
Okay. Well, I'm with you. When you think of using spar varnish, you think you really, if like you said, if it's good for boats, it's got to be good for an outdoor handrail. But boy, the elements and the expansion and contraction and the UV rays that you mentioned all really work against it. And generally, and I know exactly what you're talking about. To have that nice sheen on handrails is a great look, but it's just hard to maintain. But I'll tell you, and my buddy Joe Truini actually recommended something when I was building my new house, because I wanted to create some really nice wood shutters on the outside. Yeah. So I built these shutters out of cedar, and then to really lock it in, he had found out. Joe, I'll let you tell him about this amazing finish that worked very, very well for me.
Yeah, Joe, it's called, the name of the company is, what is it, Dan?
Total Boat. Yeah, totalboat.com. And
the product itself is called Lust, Lust. And the thing that caught my attention is that they said you can put on, I think, 4 or 5 coats of this stuff in a single day. Ordinarily, if you're lucky, you can maybe put on 2 coats of an ordinary finish. So go on. It's not cheap, but that might be what you need. But as you've discovered, we never recommend putting like a polyurethane on anything outdoors. Yeah, they do use spar varnish on boats, but there are 2 things going on. First, boats are typically hardwood, and you've got I assume this is pressure-treated pine. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got softwood, right, and which is expands and contracts. It's exposed to the weather. And you know what the other thing you notice with guys with wooden boats, you know what they're doing all the time? Sanding. They're sanding boats.
Well, you got a point.
Right? Every time you see one, they're either fishing or sanding. So, unfortunately, that's why you're better off with an oil finish. And the thing that I've done with handrails is if you have a router and with like a 3/8 inch, even 1/2 inch, but usually 3/8 inch rounding over bit, it's got a pilot on it, a ball bearing pilot.
Right.
And if you knock off those top 2 corners and round it over a little bit, it makes it a much softer. When you sand it, it's a softer feel. You don't have that sharp edge or sharper edge that, can feel a little rough and cause splintering, and just sand the heck out of that thing with starting with 80 grit to 100 to 120 with a random orbit sander, maybe even finishing it up with a finishing sander, and get it as smooth as you can. And then I would just go with a stain or an oil stain or this Total Boat Lust that Danny recommended. He's had experience with it, and he's loved it. So
yeah, it's great.
Certainly I would look into that, but I would not recommend any kind of varnish or polyurethane.
That sounds great.
And what you might be able to do here, Joe, and the discoloration and everything that you're seeing may simply be somewhat of an oxidation of that urethane that you put on there. So it may be that if you're catching it early enough that you don't have to strip it all down, and you might just try an out-of-the-way section of this, but just lightly sand it to get that oxidation off. Take a tack cloth and make sure you get all the dust off, and then apply a couple coats of the Total Boat on there and see what it does. It has a great finish to it. I mean, kind of I want to say a little bit of an amber kind of a feel to it, but it does. It just looks great, and I think you'll see that works out pretty good. But just go online to totalboat.com, and I think you'll be pretty pleased with the end result. And so far, mine's been up a year and a half, and it looks like it's brand new, like I just put it out there yesterday.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And the router idea is a good idea, too. Joe's giving me a lot of tips over there.
Well, us Joes have to stick together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We do enjoy trying to help you deal with some of the challenges you have as a homeowner. We all have those, no matter what type of experience level you have, no matter how many homes you've had over your life. There's always something that's just kind of there. And a lot of times it's a very simple method in order of getting past that particular problem that you might have. And a lot of times when you listen into Joe's simple solution, it solves a problem you may have. What do you have this week, Joe?
All right, Danny, here's a tip on installing a dishwasher, which has become quite a more difficult job because of all the stone and granite countertops. Dishwashers are usually secured in place with screws driven into the underside of the countertop. When it was a wood or plastic laminate countertop, that wasn't much of an issue, right? But now you have granite countertops, so it's a little harder job. So rather than trying to screw into the stone, which you can do, I've seen people do it, they drill a hole and they put in a metal threaded insert, and they screw into that. Way too much work, and you could damage the countertop trying to put in a dishwasher. So here's how to do it. To secure the dishwasher, secure it to the cabinets using a pair of mounting brackets. They actually make the little metal brackets called dishwashing mounting brackets. The little flat metal pieces with a little hook on one end. And if you open your dishwasher door, if you've bought a dishwasher that's less than, maybe 10 or 15 years old, you'll see they have little slots on the sides of the dishwasher. They also have them at the top. They have screw holes at the top so you can screw it straight in, but they also have slots on the side of the dishwasher. And those two slots are for putting in these brackets. So you just hook the brackets into these slots, and they extend out to the right and to the left over to the cabinets, because ordinarily there's a cabinet on either side, right? And you just screw it to the side of the face frame of the cabinet. That's all you do, and that holds the dishwasher in place. So if you have a stone countertop and you're putting it into a dishwasher or adjusting the dishwasher you have, go out. I think they're like $5 or $6 last time I saw them and they're just called dishwashing mounting brackets.
DIY means sawdust, work gloves, and the right tools. But at the Home Depot, the right tools means more than hammers and saws. It means a mobile app with built-in image search. That's a tool. Access an entire rental department with a swipe. That's another tool. For any project, start to finish, this isn't just DIY. This is doing like never before. This is the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Download our mobile app to get started.
Now it's time for our podcast question of the week, and this comes in from Rob Robinson. My deck is showing some settling in certain areas and is really low to the ground. I need to remove several of the deck boards to correct the sagging joists, probably as much as 12 to 15 of these. Now, since the price of lumber is so high, I would like to try to reuse the old deck boards. The problem is that they are secured with galvanized deck screws with a Phillips head that just won't back out. Is there a way to remove the screws without cutting up all the boards? I'm considering a Sawzall, which is a reciprocating saw, with a metal cutting blade for the screws. Any suggestions? Well, I tell you what, if you're able, Rob, to get to those screws with a reciprocating saw and a metal cutting blade, boy, that's the way to go. You might have to carefully remove one or two of the boards first before you start cutting those, but that's a pretty quick, easy way of doing it. And Joe, do you have any other suggestions on maybe some way to encourage those Phillips heads deck screws to back out? Because, boy, once they get seated into that treated wood, it is hard to get them out of there.
Yeah, if he only had like one board or a few screws, we're talking about 12 or 15 boards. I'm not sure how long this deck is, but he's probably, no matter what, he's probably talking 50 or 100 screws. So whatever, it has to be a relatively quick system. But you're right. The first thing he has to do is remove one board. If it means cutting it out and replacing it, whatever. But he's going to have to remove one board so he can get at the other ones. They do make screw extraction bits. I don't know if you've ever seen these, Danny, but you chuck them into a drill and you actually run them in reverse. I've had a couple of sets. I've never had one work. I'm not sure who's using them and how they work, but they're for $10. You can get one and you can try it. I've not had great luck with them. What I have done in the past, though, is I've just drilled out the screw heads. I just get a bit that's about the same diameter as the screw head, so we're probably, whatever that is, a little more than a quarter, 5/16 inch or whatever, 3/8 inch, and just drill straight down, just drill the head out. And then once the head's removed, obviously, you can just pop out the boards and then just snap off the remaining screw heads. But once you remove one board, then you can go either with, my only concern with a reciprocating saw is you have to be careful not to cut into the joist or something else. So you could use an oscillating multi-tool if you have one. They're a little more, they're easier to control, because they just oscillate back and forth. It has to have a metal cutting blade on it, and I would get several metal cutting blades because you'll go through them pretty quickly. But yeah, I think with either a reciprocating saw or with the oscillating multi-tool, I mean, it's a lot of work. I don't know how many screws you're going to have to cut to remove these. But once you remove them and make the repairs, the other option is you can take these boards and flip them upside down, and you have a nice, clean, new surface. I would recommend, finishing them all first. Put the stain on both sides and flip them over, and then you have a nice, clean surface. And you won't have those screw holes, the heads, those large holes left in the board from the old screws.
Right.
And then you have an option of putting it down without any screws, using well, you'd be using screws, but they wouldn't be visible. It'd be a invisible fastening system.
Yeah, the great idea. That hopefully that'll help you out on that, Rob. That's a pretty tough challenge because those boards, once they're put down with those screws, they are meant to stay. Hey, now Rob sent that email by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast, and we would love to hear any questions that you may have that we can answer here on the podcast. Matter of fact, we have received a lot of questions, so we're going to kind of double and triple up a little bit and see if we can answer a few more, starting right now with Beverly in Rhode Island. How can I remove rust stains from my linoleum? A new toilet was put in and the old toilet was more narrow. We know exactly what we're talking about there, Joe, and I think there needs to be some kind of federal law that says that that all toilet sizes need to be the same. But people try to make the toilets more decorative, more streamlined, and as a result, sometimes they do have a smaller footprint than the previous toilets that may be a little bit larger on that. Well, first of all, there's many cases where you're not going to be able to remove that stain because if it's down into that linoleum. But what are some of the things that you think that Beverly could try on this, Joe? The
first thing would be hydrogen peroxide. It's amazing how well that cleans surfaces. I would, you could just put it on and scrub it lightly with a cloth and see if it comes up. Probably won't, but if it does, great. But what you ordinarily have to do is put down some either paper towels or a washcloth, something like that, soak it in the hydrogen peroxide, let it sit for a couple of hours, make sure it stays wet, and then try scrubbing it off. Basically, what you're doing, of course, you're just giving it time to work on that stain. So I think I would try that before moving to like a commercial cleaner like Iron Out or anything like that.
That's a good answer to that. How about another one here from Tina in Michigan? Hey, back in the day when feather painting was in, I did it. Now, how do I successfully paint over it? I didn't really give it much of a thought and painted over it, and it looks terrible. So, Joe, I guess she's dealing with the texture on that, because of it build up. And people think if you put a coat of paint on anything, it's just going to disappear. But you only have so much thickness in the paint to cover your previous woes. It sounds like to me with Tina, that's going to be a fair amount of sanding, taking a sanding pole, or I've seen some people use a vibrating sander, which will take a while. But then you can get some pretty aggressive sandpaper, even as much as 80 grit sandpaper, and watch it closely so that you're not getting into the paper on the face of the drywall. But that could be a tough one there. But one of the things, if she's already painted it, at least she has a little something to work with there while she's sanding in order to get it fairly smooth. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't just paint over it because you're going to see it. And if you're not going to sand it off, the only other thing you could do is skim coat the whole wall with joint compound and then let it dry, sand it. You might have to go over it a second time, but I don't know if that's any more work or less work than sanding. So I guess I would probably try sanding it because maybe it would come off pretty easily. But Danny's right, man. If you don't want to damage that or roughen up that paper surface, then you have a whole nother problem. So I'm not sure. I guess I would try sanding first. If it comes off easily, then continue. If it looks like it's going to be a lot of work, skim coat over the whole wall. Seems like a lot more work, but I think it'll save you time in the end.
Tina, I've got a good feeling about this. Just give it a try, and I think you'll see that you can get it back and forget that feather painting was ever there. Hey, I'm having fun with this. Let's get another one here. Mary in Ohio. What's the best way to clean and seal a paved stone patio? Well, you want to make sure, I think using TSP, trisodium phosphate, is a great way on any masonry surface like that. Follow the directions, get the right type of scrub brush, and then just scrub it all out. It cleans fairly easily if you don't have any stains that have really soaked down into the pores of the pavers. That can be a problem if like grease coming out, dripping out of a grill, any type of gas or charcoal grill could be a real problem, or any paint that may have penetrated down in there. But if you don't have any of that and you just have a little, dirt and grime and so forth that builds up on there, the TSP will clean it well and then go ahead and let it dry. Then get a clear masonry sealer, put it in a pump-up garden sprayer, and then just pump it up and apply it real evenly over the whole thing. Not very thick. Just apply a light coat on it. Look at the manufacturer's instructions on recoating time. A lot of times it's only 30 minutes. So by the time you finish it, you can go right back and start over and coat it again. And if you have the patience and so forth to put 3 coats on it, man, it'll make a difference. Now, it'll change the color just slightly for just a little bit. It'll make it just a little glossy looking for a little while, but the next day you'll see that it's a lot more muted and really does work very, very well. So, hey, we wanted to add a few more questions into our podcast, and we're going to keep knocking out these each week, and we encourage you to send one because we're going to start doing more and more of the email questions that you send in each week here on the Today's Homeowner podcast. And again, thank you so much for the great reviews. Hey, I've got one here, Joe, that I thought was pretty cool that came in this week. The review says, useful information from 2 affable, down-to-earth guys. Might I adopt you as my uncles? How about like brothers or friends or something? But at least he didn't say grandfathers. So thank you for the great show and the usually short episodes, which really helps my attention span enormously. So
I'm happy to be his uncle anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
My short attention span.
Thank you for that podcast review, and we would encourage you to do the same thing, and we really appreciate each and every one of those reviews.
We are pretty affable, by the way.
Yeah, I know it. I like that. So we appreciate that. We appreciate you spending some time here on the Today's Homeowner Podcast, and if you have a suggestion, a question, comment, tip, anything that you would like to reach Joe and I directly with, that's all you have to do. Today'sHomeowner.com/podcast. I'm Danny Lipford along with my buddy Joe Truini. Thank you so much for listening to this Today's Homeowner Podcast.